Cranston does a really good job of narrating this movie, and as he's at the stage where he's going through his mind, he's imagining the reactions after his wife contacts the office, etc., to find out if he's been to work. He sort of does a joke-like sort of impression of how the staff might speak, the type of accent that they use. He's not an impersonator, that's to be sure, but it conveys the sort of amusement aspect of what he's doing. He's getting a great kick out of this, of being holed up in the garage and have sort of gone virtually AWOL. In his narration, Cranston speculates on how people are reacting as he views them from a distance, and he asks questions such as, would your spouse go to work as normal? And he also goes through a menagerie of emotions, most of them negative, about the people who are part of the family life. How he's sort of tolerated their behaviours, the mother who talks too much, the friends who express sort of despair or surprise. Most of this comment is superficial and is not, as he puts it, really sincere. And he's able, in his little cubbyhole, to state clearly how he feels about these people that normally he would tolerate and be polite to, and accept their ridiculous personality traits. It's quite an interesting sort of idea. So Howard Wakefield seeks out food from the garbage tins when his wife's out at work. He sneaks in and takes the occasional bottle of wine and the occasional luxury. He then voyeurs over his family from his perch high up in this garage type structure and narrates himself into, I never want that type of lifestyle again. I ditched it all. The work, the mundanity of family life. It's a crazy idea, but I'm sure we've been familiar with people that have disappeared from their current abode because they're just absolutely fed up with its mundanity. Got their passport, got some money, and walked out on a cosy, perhaps middle class lifestyle that has just become unacceptable in terms of what one wants from life. Convenient, for sure. Financially secure to a point, for sure. Has all the boxes ticked off, for sure. But fundamentally lacks that spirit, that enthusiasm, that excitement, and all the other adjectives that you would like to put at the top of a list of what you want to experience in life.
Wakefield, through narrative, continues to focus in on marital issues, different perceptions. He highlights his neighbour who basically offered his door open to mentally handicapped and maladjusted children and offered them a place to reside, offering them some sort of communal living. His wife, however, saw that as an irritation. Why do they want to live next to us? Almost as if it was likely to affect directly her life. It's just this perception that one has between people, differences of opinion. Almost the same as others that might say, well, I can't have blacks living next door to us, because they're different. And he's using this narrative to really pinpoint issues that often can bring draw marriages apart, rather than them being seen as two opinions that should be shared and assimilated, really. He's through his narrative is sort of trying not to focus on the negatives, although in numerous situations those are the things that divide people in a marriage, rather than the things that they agree on, that they first thought was valuable, that brought them together. It's sort of an analysis, really, a psychological analysis. We then get Howard recalling past successes, back to when he met his wife and managed to remove her from the grips of a friend, and showing huge amount of sort of arrogance. No, that's not the right. Certainly smiling with glee that he could do this to his friend and get one over on him. A battle of egos, so to speak, won by Howard, and we see scenes recalling that. Life experiences, recalling people who we met briefly for the odd chapter, and whether we came out through that with positive views or negative views or indifferent views of them, and these we hold on to as we get older. The memory's slightly dim, but for many influential people, I can always recall when I started to go to pubs in England, and there was four of us. I often went out with this one lad, and it became obvious after a short period of time that when we went into the bar, he would always find an excuse to go to the toilet or go back out to his car to check things, or do something to avoid buying the first round. And usually, because of cars and things, we wouldn't have any more than 3 because of possibilities of being stopped by the police. So if we had 3 rounds, I would always buy 2 and he would buy 1. But the next time we went in, it would happen again. Constantly, this became the habit. So I was paying for 2/3 and he was paying for 1/3 every time we went out. To say the least, this started to irritate me. But this is history, of one's past. So what maps out is Howard's desire of the chase, to get one over his friend, to win the girl, and he succeeds with a clever ploy. But I was touched by a statement he made a little bit later, which summed up his view of a marriage. I want you to want me as much as I want you. Equal levels of desire rather than convenience. And I think that's pretty important, because a lot of relationships after the early passions become relationships of convenience. After months of this routine, it now becomes apparent that his wife is taking the twins on a vacation which Howard assumed they couldn't afford. But the other problem is that where he's hanging out upstairs above this garage is where they store all the stuff for holidays, and he manages to distract his twins, who try and get into the room by making noises similar to rats or mice. But now he's faced with the fact that he's going to be found out. They're going to see where he's being stacked out. So he's got a slight headache. So Howard has to go one step further and sleep rough outside for a night, maybe two, and await his family's departure for their vacation. With his family away, Harvey's got more freedom. He's still scavenging, but he's outside now, walking around, and he looks like a hobo. So there's always somewhat unlikely anybody will recognise him, but there's always a chance, as he sort of sits in the park looking at a magazine, where he comes across that old conquest, the man who dated his wife before he moved in. He's made a kill on Wall Street. Harvey then faces the real down and outs, the real crime element, who are also scavenging. They're not pretending, they're doing it for real, and he has to run for his life, and he ends up in next door's house because he's frightened of being beaten up, and he eventually meets two of the maladjusted, handicapped people for real rather than from binoculars. The two maladjusted kids, one Down syndrome and the other not too sure about, probably autistic, track Howard back to his den above the garage, and they bring him some food, and then they start dipping into all the toys and memorabilia in there owned by the twins. And Howard starts to take on almost a new role. He starts to become a sort of parent to them, an educational parent, and he comes alive really as he's now able to offer the real Howard to these truly disadvantaged members of society. So he's escaped the sort of middle class, affluent, normal lifestyle, dog eat dog, and replaced it with this caring for the real disadvantaged amongst our society. As winter approaches, the room above the garage is totally inadequate to cope with the low temperatures. So once again, Howard's faced with this contrast between desired deprivation to undesired deprivation. He's also faced with the dilemma, does he come back and re-enter? But having escaped one prison, is it fair to suggest that he wouldn't want to re-enter that prison? The social mobility prison, the 9 to 5 prison. So, interesting subject matters touched on in this film. You know, we don't want one style of life and we don't really want the other style of life. We want the best of both worlds. How do you accomplish that? Separate identity versus collective aspects. Howard emerges in front of his house. He looks like something from the Bible with his huge beard, and Diana, his wife, comes out to deal with somebody who's been doing some work to relieve some of the problems of the weather, and she doesn't recognise him. Diana, after this prolonged absence, Howard is now starting to react like he's dead, clear out his stuff. The total transformation from being an entity to being a non-entity has been achieved. But the question is Howard happy with that? You know, the game has now been finished. The game has come to the end, and he's achieved his escape. But does he want to fully escape? It's Christmas. Of course, in Western countries this is a particularly emotional time where we consider what we've lost, our futures, our resolutions, etc. Howard is voyeuring in for a party inside house, which is wife and children, and a stranger arrives. He's then decides a little later that he's going to return, so he cleans himself up, and you'll have to watch the movie to find out what happened, both at who's at the party and the reaction to his reappearance.